It's hard work, huh?
Oh, it's definitely some of the hardest work you can do in high altitude on steep terrain, and carrying a heavy chainsaw all day. It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
It's for the young. And by the way, you are quite a bit older than you were then. How old were you at the time? You were 22, I guess?
I was 22, and now I'm 62.
Oh my God. I'm 70, Travis, so there you go. Wow, you're over 60 now. Holy mackerel.
Incredible. I don't feel that. I can still outrun my boys.
I don't feel it either, at all. But it happens, and those years go by. So you guys were, it started out with everybody in the truck going up there and working. And I guess that you were on your way home. It was dark. And if the movie is accurate, somebody saw something in the distance that, and I guess you were part of this, that they claimed looked at first like fire.
Yeah, it was a glow, and we tried out a number of ideas of what it might be. Deer hunters camped out there, a plane crash, a fire in the tree, but nothing was fitting in with what we were seeing.
Right. It was a full glow in the sky, kind of like in the movie, maybe not as reddish, but a full glow, and the sun had gone down, of course, in the west, so it could not have been the sun. It had to be a fire, or as you mentioned, a crash or something like that. Anyway, it was apparently pretty much directly ahead of where you were headed on that only road you were on to get out of there, right?
Right, and the closer we got, I could see that there was a break in the trees ahead, and where the light was shining across the road. So, Mike, hurry up, get up there. All of us had noticed it, and so we bounced along and went on up there. I mean, it was curious, but it wasn't all that alarming at first. But burst into the clearing, man, it was bam! It hit us right between the eyes. It was unmistakable. Alan yelled out, "It's a flying saucer!"
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But it obviously looked like one, certainly depicted in the movies. Did the movies have it about right the way it looked?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
But it's definitely not some little glowing point of light off in the distance like the skeptics tried to say it could have been the planet Jupiter. And this was less than 90 feet away. Unmistakable metallic disc hovering there. I threw open the door thinking it would just take off before I got 10 steps outside the truck. But the closer I got, the scareder everybody got.
They all stayed in the truck, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, they were screaming bloody murder at you to get the hell back.
Yeah, they were describing me in some rather uncomplimentary language to get back in the truck so we could get the heck away from there.
Okay.
And, I was scared too, but I was trying not to show it. So, the closer I got, the slower I went. And I could hear this sound that it was making. It was a bizarre combination of highs and lows. And
highs and lows. You mean pitched high, pitched low?
High-pitched, cyclic sort of a sound, and then a throbbing, real below bass sort of sound. It was really complex. I gave a talk to engineering school, and they were very interested in the types of sound that I was hearing because it would give clues about what might be driving this thing. But the closer I got, the scareder I got, and so when I got right up to it, I mean, I was awestruck too. Later on.
Well, let me stop you and ask you, first of all, it's not your average person, Travis, that would get out of the truck and try to run under something like this. The average person would do what the guys in the truck did after, something happened to you. They would take off like a bat out of hell. I mean, that's scary. So can you remember in your mind what caused you to get out of the truck and try to get under this thing?
Well, that's what I was starting to say, is that Alan and Steve thought to them it looked like I was under outside control, that I was in some kind of trance. But, I think we were entranced, so to speak. It was just an incredible, awesome sight, and all the crewmen agree with that. And it was just wow. And plus the sound, and plus there was something in the air, just this feeling. Mike said it seemed like something was about to happen, and I think that we were sensing this electrical charge that was building. But
oh yes, humans can feel that.
yeah, and what was making the hair rise on the back of your neck wasn't just fear. It was something kind of like a huge static charge or something.
That's probably exactly what it was. You can get that same feeling. I've been under 500,000 volt lines, and you can actually get little shocks from touching the wet grass beneath it, and you could feel that in your whole body. Something like that.
Yeah, and plus the vibration. It was subsonic and ultrasonic. They said they could feel it in the vibrating from the metal of the truck. But Mike turned the engine off because when everybody started explaining, he had to lean over to see what everybody was looking at. But when I got up to where I was looking up at about a 45-degree angle, it was just so astonishing. It was smooth as glass over the entire surface, but parts of it were glowing and parts of it were metallic, and it was giving off this glow at the same time you could see the surroundings reflected in the surface. It's kind of like when you look at a television set and you can see, from the window.
So it was reflective, not like a mirror, but somewhat reflective.
Yeah. And as I was looking up at it, those guys were, pretty much in a panic, screaming at me to get back in the truck. And I decided to turn around and run, but it suddenly got louder and started to move. And so I just instinctively just jumped for cover. And there was a log in the middle of the clearing, part of this brush pile that was there. And so I jumped down behind it, and then, immediately, decided to run back to the truck. But when I stood up, my head and chest at that point became the closest point to that vehicle craft that it had been in that entire time. And that's when I just felt a shock. It felt like I'd been physically hit by a truck, but it also felt kind of like an electrical shock, sort of this numbing, sort of a paralyzing feeling. But that was something I needed just as I blacked out.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Travis. Are you on a portable phone?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I am on a cordless hardwired line.
Cordless hardwired. Okay, good. I'm getting it occasionally break up, but nothing big. Fine. So you decided at the last minute, the heck with this, I'm going to run.
Yeah. And
again, different than the movie, right? It didn't show that in the movie. What it showed in the movie was you got thrown by this thing. So that was wrong.
That is what happened.
Oh, it is what happened.
I decided to run, but I didn't. Just standing up and zap. And there was, the way it's depicted in the movie, the actor jerked and then was thrown back.
Right.
Trying to drag out. It was just it's strange because Hollywood normally, wants to put on a light show, and they really missed an opportunity there because it was far more violent than they depicted. It was so violent that it was compared, by the crew that was watching to a grenade or a landmine throwing me through the air.
Wow.
Some guy said, it threw me 10 feet. Some thought it was 20 feet, but John said that my body fell like a sack of meat, like there were no bones in it. They said that no attempt to break my fall or anything, to the point where violence was so powerful that they immediately started screaming they'd kill him.
Yeah, they were convinced you were dead, and frankly, even from watching the movie, I can understand that. They thought this thing had killed you. And of course, at that point, if the movie is accurate, they said, heck with this, we're getting out of here, and went tearing down some of the rest of that road as fast as they could go. That
and they were wrecked in the truck. And, I do not blame them. I always want to say that those did the right thing at that point. What was the point of risking everyone's lives to save somebody they thought was already dead? So anybody that thinks that was cowardly is just wrong. Mike, had the safety of the crew, under his responsibility. When they got up the road, they said that they argued about whether it had actually disintegrated or incinerated me. When they were unable to find some deer hunters, with guns to come back, they decided they would come back. Now, in the movie, when Mike said, this truck's going back, anybody who doesn't want to can get out and wait here, nobody volunteered to stand alone in the dark like in the movie. They all said, no way, we're staying with the truck. So they all went back.
Okay, so, oh man, that's really a deviation. So every one of them went back. They didn't stand in the dark, as they did in the movie. They all went back. Well,
yeah.
Bless their hearts.
I give them credit for that. That took courage.
Yeah, true.
Like I was telling Steve today, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is to keep going in the presence of fear.
Yes. All right. So when they got back there,
Kenny was saying the scariest thing to him, because they saw the craft leaving. The scariest thing to him, he thought, would be what my charred body was going to look like laying there.
You say they saw it leave?
Yeah, as they approached the area, they saw it streak off.
Wow. And obviously they were immediately looking for you, and you were not there anymore. Now, was there any trace left on the ground of either you or the presence of that craft above?
Well, in long-term of ongoing research, there was evidence of the craft having been there. And when the sheriff brought in the tracking dogs from the state prison, they were unable to find the trail going anywhere beyond where my body fell in the middle of that clearing.
And before we get further with this story, because people are going to be going, oh, come on, when you get into the details, your entire crew was given a lie detector test. And if I have it right, in the first one, Dallas may have been a little unreadable because he was so freaked out, but everybody else passed the lie detector test. And then moreover, they were later given a second lie detector test, and everybody passed.
Yeah, the second round, Alan Dallas first, because obviously he had walked out on his initial test, but this was with the same examiner. And Mike was retested. I took 2 more tests from the state police lie detector expert, which, at the time that the 6 tests had been passed, the president of the American Polygraph Association said that although polygraph on a single test is less than 100%, when you have that many people passing tests on the same issue, the odds are over 1,000,000 to 1 of there being any error.
Everybody involved took multiple lie detector tests, and so this, it's a real thing. Listen on, I guess, at your own peril if this kind of thing scares you, and it scares me.
As of now, there are 16 past tests. I've passed 5 different tests with 3 different examiners with extensive years in law enforcement, which is considered the better, more qualified polygraph examiner.
Even in the movie, the guy came out and said, look, the truth is, these guys were telling the truth, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and, the examiners stand by it to
in the interviewing they were doing, as they thought you might have been murdered, they spoke to Alan Dallas. Now, it was referred in the movie, or referenced in the movie, that Dallas was kind of I don't know, what words would you use to describe?
Black sheep of the crew. Yeah, he had some trouble with the law, and he was just generally, I had a few run-ins with various guys in the crew, and he and I had done a little sparring. And
yeah, he didn't much like you, I guess, huh?
There was a little bit of antagonism over some things, It was a girl that he had been approached that I had been dating. This was before my wife. And then he and Mike got in a fist fight in the street in front of my house. And so, it was just his nature. But the day of this incident, he had dropped a tree nearly on me. And that's what led to all this problem with the polygraph. Did he have any bad intentions to
I see. That's why it came out a little screwy.
Yeah, because he was pretty sure that they were going to try to pin the murder on him.
Well, it looked like they might try pretty hard for a while there. What they never explained, and Alan admitted that there had been, Alan Dallas admitted there had been an altercation with you. Now, was he referring to the tree? Because he had a pretty nasty cut on his hand. And they never explained that.
We get scratched at work all the time, And after I was returned, the doctor examining me, found a puncture on my arm. And, it was assumed that happened during my abduction, but it could have easily been, being poked by a thorn in the course of a work day,
Well, the one on Dallas looked really serious, like, he touched a chainsaw or something. Did you have a fight with him?
Not with chainsaws. He nearly dropped the tree on me, and I gave him a dirty look and said some things under my breath if he could read lips. It wasn't a friendly exchange there, but
not physical?
Not normal. A rough bunch of guys.
Oh, yeah, of course. Alpha males, all of you. But was there an actual physical altercation with him?
When he tried to spin kick on me, Steve, the youngest guy on the crew, laughs about how Alan fell on his behind trying to do that. It was just semi-good-natured sparring.
Okay. All right. So no altercation that would have produced a cut like they showed.
No.
All right. Now back to you, Travis, and you were. While the whole town is going nuts and they're searching for you for all these days, you're suddenly in, well, where?
Well, I woke up on board the craft. I didn't know where I was at first, but I was in a lot of pain, and I was in and out for a while. And when I finally did come to, it was in a foggy, hazy kind of way. My vision was blurred and even double vision, and it even hurt. The light, even though it wasn't bright, hurt my eyes. And the pain in my head and chest was incredible. And I felt it was life-threatening. Something was terribly wrong inside.
Describe your environment, if you can, when you woke up. Can you? When you looked around, what do you see?
It was dimly lit, and I could hear the sounds of movement around me, and I could just barely make out the forms of what I thought were doctors. But then my vision cleared, and I could see these aliens standing close. And it just completely freaked me out. I was already scared about the way I felt, but I just completely lost my mind with fear.
That's how white.
Were you, describe what you were on, if you can. Were you on a slab?
I was lying on my back, and I was close enough to the ceiling before I even looked over and saw them. I I figured I was on some kind of a gurney or a raised operating table, and I thought, that I'd been hurt somehow and taken to the hospital. But then when I finally focused on what I thought were medical people, it was these aliens, and I just flipped out.
Okay.
And a lot of people think, I would stay calm, ask good questions.
Who thinks that? Not me.
But you have to understand that, the pain I was feeling, the feeling of something mortally wrong inside, but moreover, the most important feeling was that I felt like I couldn't get enough air. The feeling of suffocation. There's a scene in the movie of a membrane.
Yes.
When the actor's laying on the table and aliens are surrounding him, and he's struggling to scream through this membrane, struggling to breathe through it. That didn't actually happen, but I think in that case, it does a better job of explaining the source of my panic, or at least the chief source. That feeling of suffocation combined with the feeling of weakness, like you can't move when you need to move quickly. To get away. And so, suddenly realizing where I was gave me a shot of adrenaline, a burst of strength to actually sort of lash out at them. It was, pretty weak. And it was more of a push than a hit. And I rolled away in the opposite direction. This device they had lying across my chest fell off and hit the floor, but I just mainly kept my eyes on them as I backed away or stumbled backwards. And when I bumped up against this shelf behind me, I just looked real quick to see what I'd run into. And there was some things there, and I just grabbed the biggest thing there and started flailing in their direction. And that stopped their approach.
All right, two things to ask. One, the movie depicted a lack of gravity. You said something fell and hit the floor, so obviously there was some gravity.
Yeah, there was gravity. There was no weightlessness.
Okay.
And it's actually, if anything, it might have been slightly heavy gravity.
Really?
To explain that feeling of weakness, although just the feeling of injury. I really think that whatever happened with that blast of energy from the craft, it did so much damage that when I came to at that point, whatever efforts had been made to revive me were not complete.
All right, you described aliens very close to you, and of course everybody would like to know, forget the movie, were these creatures all similar, or can you describe?
Yeah, they were very similar,
okay.
And you do have to forget the movie because they changed them. The panic that the people at Paramount had was that these aliens had been in another production immediately prior to the production, filming of Fire in the Sky,
right.
And they did not want anybody, seeing something that had been seen before, so they changed their appearance. But they were back in then they didn't have the term grays, but that's what people call these small, hairless, grayish white beings with huge eyes.
And that is what you saw?
Yeah.
So that part of it actually, there's a classic gray that you just described, hairless, pretty small generally. Any idea how tall they were?
Shorter than 4 feet, sure.
So small.
But, I really don't really use the term gray. I don't like that. I think that there's probably a number of similar species that are just being stuck under one name that really come from really different places. And I have a whole line of reasoning that tells me that that's the case. The variations in descriptions that you see, and also there are a number of species of animals on the Earth that look very similar, that are completely genetically unrelated. They just look similar because they live in a similar environment. think is the case with these,
Whatever they are.
yeah.
So you pushed one, I guess, pretty hard. Did he go reeling backward or what?
Yeah, it was softer and lighter than I expected, but it fell back pretty easily. And it was probably partly because it was totally unexpected. I think they were trying to maintain control of me, and it took me many years to figure out that it was probably some kind of neurological impairment due to this blast of energy from that craft that actually worked against their normal method of being able to control humans and keep them in some kind of trance or in an unconscious state. And that's why when they came around and I started flailing at them and they stopped and stared at me, that I felt that stare was so excruciating. That was my nightmares for months after the incident. That stare gave me this horrible feeling in my head. And in support of that was the EEG that I was given immediately afterwards that showed there was some kind of anomalous pattern that, I think is consistent with, some kind of burst of energy hitting me in the head.
Did they ever get control of you?
No, they were unable to get control of me, and I was thinking of fighting my way past them when they abruptly turned and left the room. They may have anticipated my move or just given up on. If the three of them combining their forces couldn't control me, they were going to have to go to plan B of some kind.
All right. Can you describe the room you were in?
It was very small, dimly lit, cramped, not at all like depicted in the movie. It was not organic looking. It was not cluttered. Very featureless, metallic surfaces. I saw no writing or symbols, but, they may see in a broader spectrum of light than we do, and there may have been something
that you didn't see.
Yeah, but anyway, they left and went down this passageway to the right, so I went out and went to the left, fearing that they would come back.
Of course.
Looking for a way out, just in a blind panic to just open the door, and my back of my mind thinking, just drop to the ground, be back in the woods.
Drop to the ground.
Thinking that the craft was still in the woods.
That could have been acceleration that you were feeling that would make you feel heavier. At this point, you couldn't even really know if you were still in the atmosphere of the Earth or way past.
Yeah, in hindsight, it would have been foolish to get a door open, but that was my goal. So I was afraid because the passage was so narrow and so cramped and it turned so tightly that I couldn't see very far behind me to see if they were chasing me, and I couldn't see very far ahead of me to what was I, coming to.
Actually, I can see why you would think that. You might even think that you were still hovering not all that far above the forest floor. So, yeah, of course. That makes sense. That you would look for a door.
I went into this room where there were other doors leading out of it, which later piecing together the floor plan wouldn't have led to the outside, but I thought at that point that was my best bet of escaping this place.
Makes sense to me.
And so I pushed buttons and things trying to open the door unsuccessfully, and it did cause this star pattern projection to move at one point.
What do you mean?
And
star pattern?
There was this room was darkened and had points of light. Now, whether it was a planetarium-like projection or some viewing method of where it was actually at in real time, I don't know. But, it was very disorienting to have this pattern move.
Isn't that interesting? I don't recall hearing this before. A star.
Well, it might have been, like just a map that was moving. But when your sole points of reference are these points of light, it's
right.
I was already unsteady on my feet. So I decided to quit messing with that. And, idea.
No idea.
You know, my initial impression was, since this was the first thing I was remembering since, you know, turning to run away, I thought it was immediately afterwards. But in hindsight, it could have been a day or two, or, you know, who knows how long afterwards. And also very far away.
Okay. What is your sense of the totality of time that you spent on the craft? How long?
Well, the conscious memory that I had upon return, it was a very brief period of time. I figured it was less than an hour. But obviously 5 days and 6 hours.
Wow.
Everybody leaps to the question, what about time dilation? You travel near the speed of light and time passes more slowly for you.
Right.
Well, the thing that refutes that was when I told my brother, you know, said something immediately upon being recovered. Something he said about my mom worrying these days. He could tell that I thought it was still the same night.
Wow.
And he said, Travis, you've been gone 5 days. Feel your face. And I had a 5-day growth of beard. And that is what overturns the time dilation idea.
Travis, I get questioned, and by the way, people are asking, what was the movie? My goodness, it is a long time ago. It's called Fire in the Sky, and you can still see it. And we've got updated stuff for you coming up. We'll tell you all about it in a moment.
I saw it on television night before last. It's still showing out there.
It sure is.
And it was on Netflix last I heard.
There you go. Joe wants to know what the device, the medical device you thought it was, what did that look like, the one on you?
Well, it was glowing, kind of a greenish glow coming from underneath it. So I don't know whether it was some kind of a treatment device designed to repair the damage that was done internally, or if it was something designed to diagnose or look inside. But I definitely think my regaining consciousness was unexpected and actually kind of put a kink in their efforts to revive me. Many years I thought that you know, I was taken aboard for experiments or to torture me, but it was actually probably more about reviving me.
Richard asked, did Travis get the feeling that the aliens didn't care whether you lived or died? In other words, did you feel they were caring for you, about you, or just sort of didn't?
The Richard's question is related to what I was just saying, that at the time, their complete lack of emotion, I interpreted as hostility, but in total perspective, analyzing what happened, the way it fits in with the medical tests afterwards, and how I was returned and everything, it took me years to realize that it was probably more of an ambulance call than an abduction, that I got myself hurt, and that made it necessary to take me aboard just to avoid leaving me there as galactic roadkill.
You said you didn't feel as though you were more than about an hour in total had passed on board the craft, yes?
Yeah, a very brief period of time. Of course, in a state of complete hysteria, it seems like forever. But, you know, when you piece together what happened and, you know, even the waiting periods, it was less than I thought, you know. It certainly doesn't account for the entire time. But there were little glimmers of memory, and, you know, the hypnosis reinforces this, that there were blocked memories that happened that I'm unable to recollect even after all this time, that other than what, you know, came out under that first hypnosis session.
What did come out under the hypnosis session? What did you find out?
You know, up to that point, I was so traumatized that I could hardly finish a sentence about it. And I had not really told the entire story of what I had experienced to anyone, including my brother, until that hypnosis. And it was because it was just so traumatic, I'd break down. I could hardly finish a sentence. And so the technique was to separate
how did you get from the craft? I mean, we last left you going down a hall or passageway or something, and then what?
Well, my unskilled, I would say, button pushing, trying to open a door, must have attracted some attention. I don't know, maybe coincidentally, this person came in that I took to be a human being from some Earth-based space agency or military arm from the Earth, and but I really think now that wasn't the case. He took me out of this craft, and at this point, it was parked. It was inside of this big hangar-like structure. It could have been a building somewhere, a military base or somewhere, or it could have been a part of a larger craft. It had a sort of a look to the roof and wall that looked sort of like I'd seen in airplane hangars. But the light coming from these panels could have been filtered sunlight through a translucent panel, or it might have been an artificial natural light sort of light fixture. I have no idea where it was. I couldn't see out through these windows, or if they were windows.
At any point, did any of these creatures communicate with you in any way, either vocally or telepathically?
I think that excruciating encounter initially with the three of them was an attempt to say something telepathic. And I was curious about why it was so excruciating until I connected to possibly that I was injured and the receiver, so to speak, wasn't operating correctly. I was interviewed the same day for this new movie coming up called 701, which refers to the 701 unresolved Blue Book cases. This movie is in the works yet, but I was interviewed the same day as these school kids from Zimbabwe, and I asked the young lady what that felt like when these, I don't know if you heard about this, but if everyone heard about this thing where there's like 60 kids at recess in broad daylight, and this craft came down, and these aliens, like I've described, came out and communicated to them through this stare. And I wanted to know if it was excruciating like for them, like it was for me. And they said no, it was very pleasant. The message wasn't unpleasant, it was friendly. And so that convinces me all the more that it was just an attempt with extreme aggressiveness, combined force of the three of them trying to get control of me before I hurt them, and actually hurt myself, because I think my unscheduled regaining of consciousness interrupted some life-saving repairs. And so that's the reason for a human-looking person to come in and take me out.
Fully human?
Apparently, in most ways, there was something odd about the eyes, but again, I go back to the biology. See, Skep are really fond of saying, this is ridiculous, there are no aliens, because everybody reports bipedal, 2 hands, 2 legs, a head on top. Oh, they're not going to look anything like that, they're going to be a tentacled octopus. Well, that's ridiculous. If you understand the principles of biology, bilateral symmetry is almost, throughout all life on Earth, no matter how diverse it is. And you have many cases where animals that resemble each other very, very much are completely unrelated just because they are in a similar ecological niche, a certain similar environment.
Sure. These creatures, were they wearing helmets, or were they breathing if they were breathing?
What so-called grays, were not wearing anything but coveralls, but the human-looking one was wearing a helmet over his head. And so that was the reason I sort of accepted the fact that he was not responding to my battle